Everyone laughed. The room was warm with chatter, the smell of wine and candle wax mingling in the air. I thought it would be funny, harmless even, if I teased my husband in front of our friends. Just a little joke. Something about how he never remembered birthdays correctly, how he took forever to pick a movie, how his wardrobe was, let's be honest, mediocre at best. I didn't mean to humiliate him. I swore I didn't. I thought it would get a laugh, make the room light, make us all feel comfortable. But that night, I learned the hard way that words, once spoken, are almost impossible to take back. It started casually. I made a small remark about the tie he was wearing, too loud, too bright, too obviously bought on a last-minute whim. I laughed at the comment, expecting him to chuckle along, but he didn't. He just stared, a subtle narrowing of his eyes, a small crease forming on his forehead that I had never noticed before. I waved it off, joking about how he needed fashion advice, how he really should trust my judgment when it came to clothes. Everyone laughed, awkwardly at first, then louder, but he said nothing. And that silence, that pause, should have been the first warning. We moved to the couch after dinner, the group forming a loose circle with glasses of wine in hand. I couldn't help myself. The teasing continued. I made fun of his ability to cook. Well, the lack thereof, how he could barely boil an egg without turning it into a small kitchen disaster. I mimicked him flailing around with a spatula, exaggerating his gestures until the group roared. I laughed at my own impression, oblivious to the tightening in his jaw, the way his hands clenched slightly in his lap. I thought it was playful. I thought he would laugh eventually. But he didn't. That night, as we drove home, the tension was palpable. I tried to break the silence, suggesting we stop by the late-night diner for a coffee, trying to lighten the mood with small talk. He nodded but said very little. There was a distance between us that hadn't existed before. I wanted to dismiss it, to tell myself that he was just tired, that I had gone too far with the jokes, but that he would forgive me. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew marriage. But sometimes knowing someone isn't enough. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, quietly making coffee. The sunlight filtered in, hitting his profile in a way that made him look older, more worn, more serious than the man I had mocked the night before. I attempted a small smile, a casual comment about the weather, but he didn't meet my eyes. He poured the coffee, set it on the counter, and walked past me without a word. My stomach twisted. That unease, that small discomfort from the night before, had grown overnight. And then he said it, the one sentence that changed everything. You humiliated me last night. I froze, a hand lingering over the cabinet door as I tried to process what I had just heard. It was a joke, I managed, my voice faltering. Everyone was laughing. I wasn't serious. He turned, finally meeting my gaze. His eyes were calm, but the storm behind them was unmistakable. A joke, he repeated slowly, at my expense in front of our friends. You thought it was funny to make me look small. I felt a flush rise in my cheeks. I wanted to argue, to explain, to justify myself. But the words stuck in my throat. The truth was undeniable. He was right. I had mocked him. I had laughed at him, and in doing so, I had placed myself above him, using humor as a weapon without realizing it. That day the silence lingered. Every word I tried to speak seemed to falter. Every attempt at conversation met with polite nods and brief, controlled responses. I couldn't force him to forgive me, and I couldn't ignore the consequences of my actions. I had built this moment, this distance, myself, brick by brick, joke by joke. And now I was forced to confront the reality of it. By evening he had left the house for a walk. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror, questioning everything I thought I knew about myself, about him, about us. How had a few jokes, a few careless words, created a chasm between us? It wasn't just about last night. It was about respect, about trust, about the understanding that marriage is not a stage for ridicule. When he returned, I was waiting in the living room, trying to appear calm, trying to find the right words to mend the damage I had done. He walked in, and I could see the restraint in his movements, the careful way he held himself as if to protect his own dignity. He sat across from me, hands folded, eyes unwavering. You need to understand something, he said, voice steady, controlled. This isn't about one night. It's about patterns. It's about respect. It's about understanding the line between humor and cruelty. I nodded, tears threatening to spill. I tried to speak, but the words tumbled awkwardly from my lips, incoherent and desperate. I didn't mean it. I just thought it would be funny. I love you. He held up a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. Love isn't just words. Love is respect. And last night you crossed a line. The room was silent. Every memory of laughter, Every giggle at his expense weighed heavily in the air. I realized then that I had not just embarrassed him. I had shifted the power in the relationship, using humor to assert control, to diminish him in front of others. And in doing so, I had broken a trust that was not easily repaired. Days passed. The awkwardness lingered like a shadow over our home. I tried to be careful, to soften my tone, to show consideration in every gesture. But he was distant, polite, measured, and there was a sharp edge to his interactions that hadn't existed before. I had underestimated him. I had assumed forgiveness would come easily, that he would laugh it off. But the truth was that real respect, real understanding, is earned and preserved, not taken for granted. One evening, he sat me down at the kitchen table, the warm light casting long shadows across his face. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice low, unwavering. "The impact of your words, the way you used humor to put me down?" I nodded, swallowing hard. The weight of guilt pressed down on me. "Yes," I whispered, barely audible. "I understand." He leaned back, eyes scanning the room as if measuring the weight of what had happened, of what could happen. "You have to understand," he continued, "that actions have consequences. You may not see them immediately, but they linger. They change dynamics. They shift power. And in this case it changed ours." I felt the sting of truth pierce me. My laughter, my teasing, my attempt at being funny had not been harmless. It had been a weapon, and it had left a wound. One that would not heal quickly, one that required patience, effort, and humility to repair. For weeks I tried to show change, not through words but through actions. Small gestures of care, listening, acknowledging, giving space. Every attempt was met with cautious observation, measured approval, but the warmth and ease that had once existed between us remained fragile, suspended by a thread. I realized then that trust is delicate, that respect is earned continuously, and that laughter at someone's expense, no matter how small, is never trivial. I mocked my husband in front of him and paid the price. And the price was not dramatic, not explosive. It was quiet. It was a distance that grew silently, a coldness that lingered, a recognition of a line crossed, and the effort required to rebuild what had been lightly taken for granted. It was the lesson that humor, when used carelessly, can wound deeply, and that love is as much about dignity as it is about affection.